The bad feeling that saved my life. Hello, my name is Christoph, and I'm a high school student in my first year, so I'm 16 years old. This story took place during the second week of Easter vacation in 2023 when I was 15 years old, and it happened in my mother's house. At that time, my mother had decided to renovate the kitchen because it was really outdated. A blonde guy with blue eyes came to start the work, which involved putting up plastic sheets on the walls and a divider in our living room, which is next to the kitchen. Later that day, I had a dental appointment to pick up an impression. My mother had informed the worker that we'd be back in an hour and a half. But since the appointment was quick, we returned after only 45 minutes. On the way back, my mother suggested we get kebabs and do a good deed by dropping the worker at the train station. When I returned to offer him a ride, I noticed he seemed uneasy, wearing a nervous smile, as if to say everything was fine. I insisted that he join us, and he agreed. On the way, he explained that his name was Brian. I'm using a pseudonym for privacy, and that he was originally from Moldova. He mentioned he lived alone in Paris but had 2 children back in his home country. We dropped him off, got our kebabs, and returned home. After eating, I decided to take a bath, as I often do. However, the hot water turned cold, so I spent about 2 hours in lukewarm water, then went back to my room. Upon opening the door, I noticed my PC was on and showing the lock screen wallpaper, even though I remembered closing it before going downstairs. I asked my mother if she'd been in my room or touched my PC, but she said no. She'd been watching the news in her room. After a quick search of my room turned up nothing unusual, I went to sleep. At 5 a.m., I woke up sweating and shivering, feeling an intense sense of danger and that someone might be nearby. So I grabbed a knife. I have a passion for edged weapons and a collection of knives, katanas, and shurikens on my bedroom wall. I searched my room again but found nothing. The feeling didn't go away, so I locked my door and messaged my mother to see if she was awake and had felt the same. She didn't respond. I waited for 3 hours until I heard her moving around. When she came to see me, I explained what had happened that night. She reassured me that I was probably just being paranoid. She also mentioned that Brian would arrive around 10 a.m. to continue the work and that, since she'd be at work, I'd be alone with him. She told me I wouldn't need to let him in because she'd shown him where the spare key was kept in a woodshed next to the door. After she left for work, I locked my door and went back to sleep. I woke up around 11:30, went downstairs to make food in the basement, since the kitchen was under construction, and didn't see Brian. I thought nothing of it until, as I was heading back upstairs, I bumped into him. As soon as I saw him, the bad feeling returned, but he started talking to me. I ended the conversation quickly and returned to my locked room. 10 minutes later, Brian knocked on my door, asking for help carrying something. I didn't respond because I didn't want to see him again. He then started trying to open my door and began kicking it hard. My first instinct was to grab a knife, lock myself in the bathroom connected to my room, and call the police. In a panic, I explained what was happening, and the dispatcher said 2 cars would arrive in 10 minutes. While I waited, Brian managed to enter my room and began breaking down the bathroom door. I shouted that I'd called the police. They'd be here any minute. I had a knife, and I wouldn't hesitate to use it. Hearing this, he stopped banging on the door and left. The police arrived and caught Brian as he tried to flee. My mother came home immediately, saw me, and burst into tears, apologizing for not listening to me. A few days later, the police called to explain that Brian was wanted for kidnapping, identity theft, torture, and murder. I believe that uneasy feeling I had during the night was because Brian had returned and was hiding outside my room, knowing where the spare key was kept. But now he's in prison, and I hope to never see him again. Thank you for reading my story. It's amazing how our instincts can protect us, and I'm grateful I locked my door. I'm also thankful for my collection of knives. I don't know if Brian would have left if I hadn't mentioned it, and I especially thank the police for their quick response and for catching him.